Hello everyone, today I'm in Prescott, Ontario, and I'm going to take you on a tour of the Prescott Riverwalk. Let's go check it out. On my right here is the Scuba Park. That's a nice little sitting area. And here is the Scuba Park staging shelter. And I'll just show you the sign. Right, so the Prescott Scuba Park. So the description is, Prescott is ideal for practicing your diving skills with minimal current, things to see, and manageable depths. There are guidelines at the site, and if you get lost, go north to return to shore. Okay, and then it just shows you a map. And then I'm just going to show you to my left that there is tons of parking here for the Scuba Park and for access the Riverwalk. And as you can see, there is a nice sitting area here to enjoy the water. All right, now let's push on. So the next feature is the Prescott Riverwalk Park. Which has tons of interesting like sculptures and a play area for kids. So I'll show you all the features. There's also tons of historical plaques along the way that you can read to learn more about Prescott. Alright, so here is the Riverwalk Park sign. And then to my left here, we can explore the park. So there's tons of benches and other seating here to enjoy the park. There's also Adirondack chairs under this awning here that you can enjoy. Right, so here is the awning with Adirondack chairs. And there is a cannon. As you can see, you've got really nice views of the St. Lawrence River from here. And then you can explore some other artwork that's kind of interesting. And so here's one. And then there's little plaques that explain what they are. So, urn. A prime example of Canadian artwork, this urn evokes memories of the early fur trade with its depiction of the iconic beaver. While the urn's exact provenance and purpose is unknown, it is believed to have been crafted in the Prescott area in the mid to late 19th century. So keep your eyes peeled for a little interesting information along the way. So next, there is an anchor. says this is the Admiralty pattern anchor. This ketch-type anchor found in Lake Ontario was in common use from the late 1800s through to the 1960s, as seen on the original dedication plaque preserved here. This anchor was presented by the Canadian Coast Guard to the Forwarders Museum on Water Street, where it was a familiar sight for many years. There it is again. Right, so next, there is this barrel. Right. So this sign says, whiskey barrels, such as the ones seen here, were a big part of Prescott's liquor trade in the 19th century. Once they were discarded by the distilleries, they were often converted to swish barrels and filled with a gallon or so of water that was then swished around to create new spirituous beverage. Sorry for my shadow. And then also throughout the Riverwalk, pay attention to the ground because you will find some interesting things to see as well. So this one, let's explore. So swim. This is fun for kids. Climb. Step. And jump. All right, so let's now take a look at the children's playground over here. So there's a nice kids' playground. Kind of got a nautical theme to it. And as I said, there's tons of plaques around here with interesting historical facts. I will read a few of them to you, not all of them, but definitely I said keep your eye out because there's lots of interesting historical facts on this river walk. So, the St. Lawrence River provided Prescott with an ideal location for brewers and distillers in the early days. At first, these firms catered to local demand. As early as 1819, there were about 50 houses and stores in Prescott, including many taverns on Water Street, the main business thoroughfare. Prescott was known as a hard-drinking town. The Prescott Brewery was operated by William Ellis on the lands now occupied by the Coast Guard base. In 1861, his operation employed 10 men and produced 5,000 barrels of beer with a value of $35,000. Shortly after, the brewery was taken over by the Labatt family of London, Ontario. It operated until Prohibition began. The building later became an armory and burned down in 1960. Just give you a closer look. So that is the Labatt's Brewery, Prescott. Thomas Dowsley. Granville Brewery, Prescott. Crichton's Brewery, 1839. So details of the early breweries and distilleries are sketchy, but by 1837, a Scotsman named Thomas Crichton founded his brewery in the west end of town. His business prospered, and by 1851, he was producing over 1,500 500 barrels of beer annually. After his death, his son John succeeded him. John operated the brewery until 1868, when he sold to Robert P. Labatt, who ran it for only a few years. Today, the old brewery forms part of the town's water pumping facility. In the 1850s, the distillery was operated in Prescott on the waterfront property at the foot of Ann Street by C.P. Eggert and the Averils of Ogdensburg, New York. They engaged a young man named John P. Weiser to manage the business. By 1863, Weiser had acquired ownership, and over the next half-century, J.P. Weiser and Sons, as it was later named, grew into one of the leading distilleries in Canada. His whiskey was known for its high quality. When the business was sold in the early 1930s, the buyer, Corby Distilleries, closed and dismantled the distillery. However, the Weiser brand is still sold worldwide today, over 150 years after its first appearance in Prescott, Ontario. So that's interesting historical facts about Prescott. So this is the last one. The Grenville Brewery, just west of Prescott, was owned by J. McCarthy and Son. It was founded in 1869 and was one of Ontario's largest and most successful breweries. A large loading dock was built on the riverside to supply the brewery. The McCarthy homestead is the only original building that remains on the site near Bradley Creek. Right. As I said, keep an eye out on the ground. There's lots of fun artwork. All along the Riverwalk, there's really pretty flowers and benches to sit to enjoy the water. Here's one more historical plaque we can read before we move on. So between 1850 and 1950, passenger steamboats thrilled generations of holidaymakers with a trip down the St. Lawrence River from Prescott to Montreal. Below Prescott was a series of rapids, and the passage became known as Shooting the Rapids. In 1840, it was demonstrated by Captain Hilliard in the steamboat Ontario, built in Prescott, that a passenger ship could safely navigate the series of rapids between Prescott and Montreal. By the mid-Victorian period, the growing middle classes were looking for travel and adventures. Given its strategic location at the head of the rapids, Prescott was the jumping-off point for a thrilling ride down the St. Lawrence. Larger vessels brought tourists from the upper Great Lakes and transferred them at Prescott to these smaller steamboats that could navigate the treacherous rapids. From the spring ice breakup until late fall, boats ran regularly down to Montreal. The Richelieu and Ontario Navigation Company had a large fleet of steamboats in Quebec and Ontario. Larger boats operated between Toronto and Prescott, including the SS Toronto and SS Kingston. Passengers transferred to the smaller SS Prescott, which ran the rapids down to Montreal. In 1913, the R&O Navigation Company was merged with several other shipping lines to form Canada Steamship Lines. Their vessels, Rapids Kings, Rapids Queens, and Rapids Prince, set off regularly all summer from Prescott. Steamship travel was not without its risks and mishaps. Ironically, one such accident happened on the smooth stretch of the St. Lawrence between Kingston and Prescott. In 1889, the SS Rosse, built in 1867 in New Brunswick, collided with a tugboat and sank west of Prescott. No passengers were lost, and today the ship lies in 10 meters of water, a popular site for scuba divers. The SS Louis Renaud came to grief in the Lachine Rapids near Montreal on May 12, 1873. And then lastly, the steamboat service was suspended for a period during World War II, but resumed shortly thereafter. However, it was in 1949 that an incident occurred which was to spell the end for many of the lake and river cruise ships. The SS Noronic was a large steamer built in 1913 and operated by the Canada Steamship Lines. It could carry 600 passengers and 200 crew and made a once yearly trip down to Prescott via Toronto. It caught fire at the dock in Toronto in the early hours of September 17th, 1949, while hundreds of passengers were asleep in their beds. The huge loss of life led to an inquiry and resulted in new fire safety regulations and building codes for ships. The older steamers could not be profitably adapted to the new code. This spelled the end of an era. In the next decade, the St. Lawrence Seaway was constructed, eliminating most of the picturesque rapids between Prescott and Montreal. New summer cruise ships appeared, but not of the same size or quality as before. However, it is still possible to take a cruise from Kingston via Prescott to Montreal and see the sights along the beautiful St. Lawrence River. All right, let's push on. Next, I'm going to show you the marina up ahead. So it's really picturesque spot. Just want to point out, I'll zoom in here for you. So you've got, there's a lighthouse, and then like rocks here to protect the boats from the St. Lawrence River. And then in the far distance, you can also see the Prescott-Ogdensburg International Bridge. And right there, it's probably hard to see, but with the red roof, the tower there, that is the Battle of the Windmill historical site, and I did a full video tour of that as well, and I'll link it to this video if that's of interest to you. All right, let's carry on. Okay, so this is just a very picturesque spot. If you enjoy water and the boats and lighthouse. So it's free to stroll along this whole river walk and enjoy the sights. Don't miss that there's some little interesting art in this little garden. Okay. I should mention that this is called the Sandra S Lawn Harbour. And then the sign shows what's not allowed here. Alright, so next on my left is a little special place called Shakespeare's Gardens. Before I go in, I'm just going to show you the sign here. So the St. Lawrence Shakespeare Festival happens July 16th to August 16th. So you can check out the website. You can see it's right there if you'd like to learn more information about it. Alright, so I'm just going to go in and show you. So it's like a little amphitheater with seating. all the seating faces the stage here. So if that's of interest to you, check out that website for more information. And right here, there is a Shakespeare statue. Here's another view of the harbor. All kinds of really nice boats to look at here. That's of interest to you. Alright, so the next thing to look at is on my left. Actually, I'll just show you this sign first. This is what we're going to look at. The Rotary Lighthouse, and it's got a visitor center, and you can also get ice cream, snacks and drinks, Prescott merch, some tour guide stuff as well. So I'll just show you what it looks like from the outside. So here on my left is the lighthouse. And if you catch it on the right day, when it's open, you can actually climb up to the top of that lighthouse, which is kind of fun, especially for kids. So here's some more view of the boats. And we're getting closer to that picturesque lighthouse. And so here, this building here offers services for the boats. For example, right in front of me is where they can pump gas. And for those that this is useful for. And again, this is called the Sandra S Lawn Harbour. I'll show you a better view. So this is where the boats pump gas. Alright, so there's a lot more interesting things to see once we just walk past this. I'll just quickly show you that to my left, up here is where the farmer's market is. I'll give you a better view of it once I get up there, but just so you know that it's next to the harbor. Would like to point out to pay attention that there's a lot of trees planted in memory of people who have died. all along here, so definitely keep your eye out for those. Okay, here's another vantage point of where the cute farmers market is. Okay. And again, he said there's like tons of plaques all along here with trees that have been planted in memory of people who have passed away. Okay, you can see there's tons of them to look at. Right, we are getting closer to that lighthouse. It makes a great place to take pictures in front of. Oh, and we're just in time for a big cargo ship coming by, which I'll show you in 1 minute. So, I wanted to show you this as well. So, there's some fun artwork here on the ground. Kind of fun for adults and kids. And then here is fun. You can take your picture in front of it with the wings. It makes a great photo. It says, the birds, we put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly over our heads. The Creator gave them beautiful songs. Each day they remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. All right, so now you've got the great view of the lighthouse, and look at this awesome, huge cargo ship coming by. So this is the St. Lawrence again, and it is a major commercial shipping route in Canada. So you will see tons of ships going by. So if that's of interest to you, visiting any of the towns along the St. Lawrence are a lot of fun, like Prescott, Brockville, etc., Kingston, if you enjoy watching ships. Just stay here a little bit longer so you can watch it. How awesome is that? With the lighthouse. Don't know if it translates to camera, but in person it is huge. Perfect timing of it going by while we're here. All right, let's move on. So right here is the Rotary Pavilion. It's just a nice little spot, shaded spot where you can have lunch, enjoy the water. Right, so before we keep moving along the trail, I'm just going to quickly show you what the farmers market area looks like. It's not on today. I'm filming this during the week, and the farmers markets are on the weekends. But I'll just give you a quick shot of it so you know what it looks like. It's super cute. And on the ground, some fun artwork. Somebody's car alarm's going off. Alright, just quickly show you this sign so that you can have, there's food trucks, artisans, craft beer, boat rentals, collectibles, live music, events, and workshops, gelato, sweet treats, and a visitor center here. So here it is. It's just a really fun place to hang out on the weekends by the water. So there's a little sitting area here to enjoy the beer and food. And there's a stage here for live entertainment. And then over here, you'll see that there's tons of these cute little colorful buildings. Kind of makes you think of the East Coast. Where you can buy all kinds of neat things here. Anyway, so I just wanted to show it to you so you know, it gives you an idea of what it would be like to come here. Alright. Alright, so there is one last thing I can show you along the trail that we're following. So now it becomes more historical in nature. So first I will point out to my left, you'll be able to see it in 1 second once I get past these trees. Alright, so to my left here, that is Fort Wellington, the infamous Fort Wellington historical site. I have done a full video tour of Fort Wellington, so I will link it to this video for you if that's of interest to you, if you would like to see it. It is free to visit. So if you do come down here, I highly recommend that you check it out. Alright, so as I said, the next part that I'm going to show you is historical in nature. So I'm going to show you some interesting historical things along this next part of the trail. So to my left here, you'll see that this section is called the Prescott Heritage River Trail. And as I said, to my left here, that is Fort Wellington. I'll just read this to you. So over the years, this waterfront property has served many purposes. It was an important part of the defenses of Fort Wellington, incorporated a large railway depot, housed industrial warehouses, hotels, and docks, as well as being a shipping port of entry for trade goods, supplies, the military, and travelers alike. The recreational way you are experiencing the trail is yet another use of this historical landscape. Right, let's go check it out. It's not a very long trail. But it's just super peaceful. There's a nice breeze with the water. As I said, on my left, you've got a nice view of the historical Fort Wellington. And on the right, you've got the St. Lawrence, and that is the United States on the other side. And then coming up, there are a couple of super interesting historical things to see. In fact, the first one, it's, I won't say what it is yet, but it is quite unique. I've never seen anything like it. It makes for great photos. So hopefully you can see in the distance, we've got historical ruins in front of me, and I'll explain them to you in a second. And in the far distance, you can see that cargo ship, and it's about to go under the Prescott Ogdensburg International Bridge, which links Canada and the US. Right, so I'm almost there. To my right, there is a little sign explaining the historical ruins, and then I will show them to you. Right, so railways once dominated Prescott's waterfront. A rail link to Ottawa's opened for traffic in 1854. Later, a ferry terminal, station, roundhouse, and sheds were added to the yards. The CPR assumed control in 1884 and maintained operation at Prescott until the 1970s, when the yard closed. Today, only a few remnants of the ferry dock and rail yard remain. And this is just an image showing you the rail system that used to be here. Right, so we're now going to walk up and just look at it, get a much closer look at it. So these are the ruins super neat to see. This is just what's left over of the rail yard and dock. So ships would bring cargo here, and then they would go on to the trains, and then the cargo would be delivered to the different towns. And so I'm going to walk around so you can get a better look. There's also lots of interesting birds. I like to hang out on this. Comment down below if you know what some of these birds are. Some of them I've never seen before. I don't know if you can see them. I'll zoom in. There's some blackbirds over there that are quite interesting. I find this so fascinating. I've never seen anything like it. And it's really cool that they left it here, didn't take it down. All right, so coming up, can you see these birds? There's tons of birds on the top. So how fascinating is this? I really need to see it in person to get the full effect. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. And then, so over here, I'm not sure what these are, but there are some remnants blocks here as well. And then, as I said, this is Fort Wellington. This is another vantage point of it. So again, I have a full video tour of that. Fort Wellington is free admission to see, so it's definitely well worth a visit if you enjoy history. Alright, we will carry on. This trail isn't that much longer. To my right at the edge, you can see some remnants as well of what used to be here. Can't really see much, but there's definitely remnants of the rail station and yard and docks they used to have here. Right, so coming up, there's a bench there with a little more historical information I can read to you. Just give you one last look here. You can just see on the edge, there's some ruins, and then of course over there, what we looked at. very super peaceful trail. Alright, so here's another one. Sorry, I'll get my shit out of the way. There's some boats. It says Canada Steamship Lines. Let's get my shit out of the way. Then I'll read it to you. So it says, the St. Lawrence River provided a highway to the interior, first for Aboriginal peoples traveling by canoes and later for European settlers using bateau and sailing ships. By the 1830s, steamers carried supplies and passengers to communities along the river. Construction of the seaway in the 1950s opened the river to bigger ships that still sail past Prescott. Right. So we're almost at the end of the trail. It's super short. But there's one last thing I want to point out to you. And the closer we get, the better the view we will get of it. Alright, I will stop here for a second and just point out to you. And I'll zoom in. Alright, so hopefully you can see. So right here, you see there's a tower, and then it's red on the top. There's a tower and there's red on the top. So that is the Battle of the Windmill Historical Site. And again, as I said, pretty much right next to it is the Prescott-Ogdensburg International Bridge that connects the US and Canada. So I'll keep walking so we can get a little more closer to it. But as I said, I have done a full video tour of the Battle of the Windmill Historical Site, and I'll link it to this video if you'd like to watch that as well. As I said, I think to me the top three historical things and interesting things to see in Prescott are Fort Wellington, the Battle of the Windmill, and this Riverwalk Trail. To me are the top three things that I would recommend that you do if you ever come to Prescott. Alright, so hopefully it is picking up on camera the tower. And again, hopefully you can see it. It's like right here at the edge there. You can see it's just a tall stone tower with red on the top. So it was originally a windmill, and then it was converted into a lighthouse. Alright, so we are now coming to the end of this trail and therefore the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the Prescott Riverwalk and Heritage Trail. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. If you enjoy videos about things to do in Canada, subscribe to my channel. Until next time, happy travels!